So in English, we sometimes use the word as, and we put an adjective or adverb, and then we put another as, and we say things like, as flat as a pancake. I drove over this bottle, and it's been chewed on by the dogs as well, but now it's as flat as a pancake. Do you know what a pancake is? It's a very thin cake that you fry in a frying pan. So sometimes we use the word as and the word flat to describe things like this as being as flat as a pancake. In this English lesson, I'll help you learn how we do this by giving you several examples of how we use as with another word in the middle. So here's another example of how to use as with an adjective with as. It's really early in the morning right now. My family is still sleeping, although Jen did just walk by. So when I got up, I was as quiet as a mouse. You know what a mouse is, right? Like a little rodent. Usually they're quiet. Sometimes though you can hear them. But when I got up this morning, I was as quiet as a mouse because I didn't want to wake up my family. So I took the word as, the word quiet, and the word as again in order to describe how my actions were similar to an animal that makes very little noise. I was as quiet as a mouse. So as most of you know, Jen and I grow flowers, and pretty soon Jen will be as busy as a bee. If you look down here, you'll see in these crates that the tulips are starting to come out of the ground. This is very, very cool, but it also means that pretty soon Jen will be as busy as a bee. By the way, a bee, I'll put a picture here, it works really hard to go out and visit all the flowers in the field in order to bring pollen back to make honey. I think that's how it works. So when we say that someone is as busy as a bee, we're comparing them to a bee who works really, really hard to do their job. Pretty soon Jen will be as busy as a bee. So as you can see, when I compare the size of my dogs, you can see that Oscar is not as big as Walter. So when you're using as and as in the negative, you then are saying and talking about how something isn't the same as something else. Oscar is not as big as Walter. I could say that Walter is not as small as Oscar as well. If you look behind me, there are two silos here. One silo is not as big as the other silo. So when I use the negative to compare the two, I'm basically using as and as to tell you how they are different instead of telling you how they're the same. You can also use an as phrase in the negative to talk about the weather. It's a little colder than I expected out here today, but it's not as bad as it was last week. So there was a day last week where it was below 0 during the day, and then it got warmer again, but there was a day where it was really, really cold. So today isn't as bad as last week. I can use an as phrase with bad in the middle to compare the weather today to the weather from a week ago. It's not as bad as it was last week. It's not as cold as it was last week. So you can also use as with an adverb in the middle to describe an action. If I took this can of soda, this can of pop, this is Canada Dry, and if I shook it, I would want to open it as gently as possible because it's going to kind of shoot everywhere. I would want to open it as carefully as possible. I would want to open it as slowly as possible. And then if for some reason it did explode in my face, I would probably run away as quickly as possible. So you can use as and as with adverbs as well. So you may have heard this phrase before, it's as easy as pie. For me, making videos is as easy as pie now because I've done it for so many years. I don't know why we say this phrase though. It isn't actually that easy to make pie, but when we say something is as easy as pie, we mean it's really, really easy. So making videos for me is as easy as pie. Okay, it isn't always as easy as pie. Sometimes it's hard to come up with a good idea. Sometimes it's a little windier than I expect, or it's a little colder than I expect. But usually, for me, when I make an English lesson for you, it's as easy as pie. Well, thanks for watching this English lesson about as and as. It probably would have been a bit longer. I feel like I spoke a little too quickly sometimes because it wasn't as warm as I thought it was going to be out here. It was a little colder than I thought it was going to be. So I think maybe I spoke a little too quickly. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the lesson regardless. By the way, if this is your first time here, don't forget to click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you have some time and you don't know what to do, why don't you stick around and watch another English lesson. Bye.